Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about through the opposite perspective. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, how can I not think about this? Because this is the point of why I'm doing this, to think of the opposite perspective. And luckily for me, I have Dennis here who's going to help us think about this in another way. So, Dennis, I just have to ask you, going right in, what does that mean to you when you hear the words opposite perspective?
Well, really what it is, it's learning to look at life and learning to act and respond in ways that are the opposite of the social norms. And
Mm,
there's a lot of things out there that socially normal, but if you look at the opposite perspective, if we do the opposite end results, just simple things. Everybody's heard of the idea of, give and it'll be given, right? If you want to be the leader of all, you got to be the servant of all. Well, you just say, wait a second. When you give and then it'll be given. I mean, if you give, then it's gone, but that's not really true. People think, no, I got to keep. No, if you give, it opens up a whole new atmosphere, a whole new line of energy in one sense that basically it comes back. It's like you plant a seed, an apple seed, you don't get an apple, you get a tree of apples.
yeah.
So you actually get a lot more than you give. And so these are just different kind of concepts. So if we can learn to respond and act the opposite of a lot of the different social norms that are out there, that people will be very surprised. And this is just something I've learned and kind of collected, over, the last number of decades, just watching how things work.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, when did it really click for you? But I mean, I know life has been good for you because you're here, you're still living and breathing, right? So I know that you have a lot of experience on just observing, the same routines happens. And I like the fact that you said thinking out of social norms because I feel like so many people are so stuck on trying to conform into the norms of society or norms of a community or norms of whatever they want to fill the blank in just to feel accepted because unfortunately we feel the need to always have this sense of belonging. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Humans always just feel the need to belong with something or someone in such a way that sometimes they'll go to drastic measures just to make sure that they can obtain that. And I think once we start thinking outside of those social norms, it allows you to come back to yourself and wonder what you like without having to conform. Does that sound right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? You think about, okay, I want to be a part. I want to be included. I want to, it's kind of like you say, I need a community. I need a family. We were designed for community, by the way. When we were created to live in community. We have our immediate family, then we have our social family, we have our work family, but we were designed to live in community. So we want to be a part. And yet, ironically, at the same time, I want to stand out. I want to be different. So it's like, I want to be a part. I want to be like everybody else, but I want to be different. There's an opposite.
Yes, that is a very valid point.
So there's this opposite aspect principle that fits everywhere. I mean, Plato, he observed life as basically was like two horses on a chariot, pulling the chariot in opposite direction. One was the good and the noble and admired, and the other was the good, was the evil and the devilish passions and self-desire and that kind of thing. And so you got these two horses, good pulling this way and bad pulling this way. And he says, life is really just the eternal process of trying to control the bad and focus on the good. And that's what we got to do. And again, there's your opposite. One of my mentors said, well, you've got to take bad and push it into the corner. You've got to take bad health and push it into the corner. You got to take bad attitude, push it into the corner, right? Override it with the good habits and the good thought. And so, but that's that process that we go through in our life, I think. So it's pretty interesting to see how it kind of plays out.
It is very interesting. And when you were talking, it just made me realize it comes down to our power of choice, and I think we forget about that. And I had a few guests on my show just recently, and they brought that up. And it just reminded me when you were just speaking about how when you override it, you're choosing not to have that on your focus. You're choosing to focus on the good. You're choosing on what you can control. You're choosing on what's affecting you in your community. Yes, a lot of things are happening all around the world. Believe me, it's crazy out there. But
It is.
sometimes when we're able to focus on what's in front of us and what's around us and what what's happening to us specifically, then we can realize what we can really do in our moment of now. Do you think the problem sometimes people have is just that they're so focused on the future or so focused on the past?
Well, I would hope they would be more focused on the future than they are on the past. The past, regardless of the past, regardless of good, bad, or otherwise, the past is a lesson. The past is our teacher. And the old saying is if you don't learn from the past, you're bound to repeat it. We've
Yeah.
heard that, haven't we? And so we've got to learn from that. But I love what you mentioned there, the idea of, it's a choice. We all have a choice. Do we want to do this? Do we want to do that? Do we want to do good? Do we want to do bad? Do we want to do right? Do we want to do wrong? Do I want to be unselfish? Do I want to be selfish? Again,
Yeah.
this process. But here's the thing, the beauty is that we have the freedom of choice. But I've got this saying that I find so true: choices are free, consequences aren't.
Yes, that's a very valid point.
And so my thinking is when it comes to making choices, you make reversible decisions quickly, you make the irreversible decisions slowly.
That is so true.
And,
Oh my goodness.
you take a guy and he's standing on the edge of the building and say, dude, he said, get off that ledge, man. He said, don't jump. And he says, who are you to tell me what I can do? And I said, no, I'm just telling you, buddy, if you jump, man, that it's going to be really bad. And he said,
Yeah.
nobody tells me what to do. In fact, I'll show you. And he jumps, and he's on a 100-story building. You stick your head out the window about the 30th floor, and you say, hey, how's it going? He says, so far, so good. Yeah, but that next 30 floors is a killer. So
Oh, that's so funny.
and so sometimes we just don't realize, the constant want to be able to think through, what it is that we're gonna do. So and I think that's important.
I absolutely agree. And it sounds like the kind of few steps to start going in this process to start thinking of other people's perspective is kind of choosing. You know what I mean? You kind of have to first have that choice to choose if you're going to allow yourself to see that person in a different perspective or try to just give a different reason than the common excuses. For instance, like road rage. You don't have to be angry if somebody cuts you off. You could just give them a simple excuse. Oh, they could be running home. There could be an emergency, something like that. And you can forgive them and let go and move on. That's a type of way that I think like you can choose to put yourself and allow your perspective to think in about somebody else, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Well, that makes perfect sense. In fact, it's very interesting you say that because many, many years ago, decades ago, actually, one of my mentors was talking about living a purpose-filled life,
Okay.
a life with purpose. And he starts out the message with, it's not about you. And I said, whoa, 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 wait a second. That's about as countercultural as you can get. I mean, what happened to, look out for number one? It's up to me, and get what you can while you can. So that was just totally the opposite of the social norm, because the social norm is, look out for number one, right?
Yeah.
But then I started thinking about it. Wow, something that's so on the mark, and Betsy, we learn a lot from creation. And when you think about it, rivers, they don't drink their own water. Trees don't eat their own fruit. The sun doesn't heat for itself. Flowers don't create fragrance for themselves. You know, the
Yeah.
river is for others. The sun is for us. The tree is for us. In other words, all of those things, their whole purpose is taking all that they have and all that they can do and all that they can call, all the talent, skills, and abilities that they have to create the best that they can for somebody else.
Yes.
And so in lies the secret of life. It's
I
not
love
about
that.
me.
I love that. I love that you said that. And I'm so glad you put that in reference because it just made me think about how last night I was just watching National Parks and I was watching the episode on volcanoes. It's on Disney Plus, if anyone's wondering. And it was just talking about how the volcanoes would come and clear out land, but seeds would still flow in from the ocean breeze into the crevices of the deadness of the rock, right? And they would still find a way to grow. they still find a way to evolve. And they showed how it would stem from just a little roots to this flourish of just basking of different animals and just doing so much. And it wasn't even just on them. It wasn't even the thought of the seed, it was for everything else, everything that could come to it and make the island and that area so beautiful and vast as it is now today. So it's
Wow.
just amazing to think like in nature, it does it so effortlessly, so flawlessly, in such a way that if you just watch like National Geographics and things of just nature, you can just value and appreciate how the world does it automatically. So when you said the sun doesn't heat up for itself, it's like, you're right, the sun isn't selfish. The sun is providing continuously, nonstop, with no days off. It's constantly burning and providing for our world in such a way that we see it in the other planets that it does not provide the same life. So it's just
Right.
amazing that if we start to put ourselves in that type of aspect, like, 'cause we're part of this, we're part of the earth. So if we could do our parts and remember, how can I serve you, or how can I help you, or how can I assist you, changes everything. Because now my new thing is, how can I assist your life? I say it all the time to my sons, to my husband, to anybody who seems like they need something from me. Instead of being annoyed, like, okay, how can I help you? Or what do you need? I just like, how can I assist your life? And ever since I started changing those words around, my mind frame has been different. And now that my husband now is implementing that phrase, where now he's like, okay, how can I assist your life? And he said that he used it at work the other day and it changed the tone. And I'm just like, if we started using that more, people
Yeah.
will really grasp the attention of just, we need each other. We need each other. Am I right?
Well, we really do. And I love where you're talking about the volcanoes and how all of a sudden you see all this destruction, but out of the destruction came life. And,
Yes.
and and there's another opposite principle. All too often, a lot of people see the bad and good. This is good, yeah, but what about this and what about that? And oh yeah, well, that, but what about, and they go to the bad. But what about seeing the good and bad?
Yeah.
See, if we could, in other words, that's the response, learning to respond, and opposite the norm. See, in other words, okay, let's look at the good and the bad rather than try and find bad and good. But if we can look and find the good and the bad, then what happens as a result of that? Purpose, knowledge, understanding. It just all begins to open up. And when you talked about it a second too, you were talking about serving, what you can do to serve others. I mean, when you think about it, and this is where our understanding is just not right. It's incorrect. Okay, I have all these talents and skills, all these things make me special and to make me unique, and therefore I can be liked and I can be admired, but that's the wrong view. If we look at the opposite of that, the talent, skills, gifts, and abilities that I have, they're not for me. They're for me to contribute to a society. Everything that I have, everything that I know, all of my experiences, all my knowledge, all my skills, they're designed for me to be able to contribute to society. And I contribute all that I have, and then they contribute all that they have. So it's the giving out. And again, that's where you give and you get back. I give all that I have, you give all that you have, and then together we're better. One of my mentors, Jim Rohn, he always said, each of us needs all of us, and all of us need each of us. Think on
Mhm.
that one.
I know that's a real quote for you guys out there,
See?
because
And it's just so true,
it
because
is.
single one of us is unique and special in our own right. Every
Exactly.
single person has value. Because guess what? Nobody has seen the things that you have seen. Nobody's heard all the things that you have heard. Nobody's read all the things that you have read. Nobody's heard all the things that you've heard. Nobody's been through all the experiences that you have. So therefore, you are totally distinctly unique from 8 billion people on the planet. And that means you have the ability to contribute like nobody else can. You can give a perspective that nobody else can. Isn't that
Yeah.
something?
It is. It is. And I think that's what's so validating when people are afraid or they have doubt going into a field that they feel like, oh, it's flooded, or there's too many people already in this industry, or there's too much whatever. And you forget what you just said. You know what I mean? You forget that your opinion matters. You forget that your voice matters. You forget that what you can bring to the table, somebody else may not. Maybe they can color code it, put glitter on it, and act like it's you, but it's not them. Yeah, I mean, it's not you, and it's not them either. And imposters will always shine because they know that it's not who they are. But they don't realize like that when you are authentic and you embrace all that you are, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, man, it makes you so beautiful and it helps somebody, it saves somebody because your testimony, I mean, can reach only so many people and then they can reach out. And it goes back to your statement earlier about the apple and the seed. Man, that's a beautiful statement because you literally plant one seed that's so tiny and it flourishes. Yes, it takes time as life, as everything takes time. But once it flourishes and it grows, man, the amounts of apples that comes out. Like I was just walking the other day to the dollar store with my family and we passed by an apple tree and there were so many apples to the point where it was already on the floor, some were rotting, some were just, and I was just like, it's crazy to think that some of these opinions and some of you know what I mean, it's our lives, some of the things go unnoticed and unvalued because we decided to say that it's unvaluable or we decided to put it in that box so like it's not worth it or nobody really cares. Like we can't diminish who we are just because the society is not accepting. And it goes back again to what you said earlier about starting to think out of the society norms. You know, and when you put that all together, it's like a nice equation for you to have this motivation to serve and motivation to step out of your comfort zone and that motivation to just try something new even if it's scary. You know what I mean? So just like just go ahead. So I'm curious. I have to ask you, if you could tell your younger self anything now that you're well aged, what would you tell your younger self?
Well, I would just say pay closer attention, and learn to ask questions, ask more questions. It's interesting. If you ask profound questions, you're going to get profound answers. If you ask
Mhm.
casual questions, you're going to get casual answers. If you ask no questions, you're going to get no answers. So if we're going to grow and develop, I need to learn to ask questions, and I think it comes back to that principle of, we want to be interesting. Everybody wants to be interesting. It's like we want to be apart, but I want to be different, right? And we want to be interesting. Well, so here's the perfect example of responding in the opposite. If I want to be interesting, then what I need to do is be interested. If I'm interested, I become interesting. You see, but a lot of people don't realize it. I mean, when they see me on stage and this kind of stuff, they think, "Oh, here's this outgoing, gregarious, sparky, sanguine kind of guy." No, I'm not. I'm really an introvert. And when I get off the stage, I go hide in the green room. I don't want to go out front. I don't want all the stuff. I'm just going to go bury away. But the thing is, and so I had to. My business is very social, so I had to. How am I going to work with this? With people that I know and people I don't know. And I thought, I know, if I can just ask them some questions, if I can be interested in them, and so I started learning to ask questions. And if I ask questions, and especially if I ask questions about them, got to ask questions that they're competent in the answers about. Now, if you ask about certain subjects or topics, they may not know, and therefore they don't feel comfortable. But guess what? One thing everybody knows about themselves. So I ask about them because everybody knows about them, right? And so,
Mhm.
rather than say, hey, so, a lot of people, they say, well, so where do you come from? You know, Chicago, conversation's done.
Yeah.
So rather than do that, I ask open-ended questions. So you just say, well, hey, so what brought you to this area? How did you end up here?
Mhm.
Well, they know the answer, and it's a story. And
Hmm.
now they open up and they can be themselves, and all the defenses are down, and you kind of go like that. Some people say, well, so what do you do for a living? I'm a plumber. Oh, conversation done. So rather than ask, what do you do for a living? I said, well, what do you live to do? What's your path? What excites you? Oh, this excites me. And guess what? Now they can talk about whatever they want, and they know all about it because it excites them. And so I ask two or three questions. I can walk away. They think, hey, that's the most interesting guy. And I haven't said a thing. I just asked a few
Right?
questions. Find it very
Yes.
interesting.
When I was younger, one of the issues was is that I never knew how to continue a conversation. That I was just I ended it because I'm an introvert too. Like I could only have my social battery run for a certain amount of time until I have to like shut down and recharge away from the world. You know what I mean? So
I,
when you said that, I was just like, I get you. I know what that means. So I had to learn exactly what you did. You know what I mean? Having those open-ended questions, I had to practice. I wanted to actually have this type of dialogue, you know what I mean, with people, with random people. And now that I'm
yeah,
doing it, it feels so good because I've met so many people all around the world and get to have real conversations. And it feels so good. And it sucks when you have conversations with people who are very close and then they don't know how to keep a conversation going because it makes it a little bit awkward. But then it reminds you like, okay, how are you answering these questions? What are the words that you're choosing to have somebody feel defensive or open? So when you were saying that, it just brings it all to light. Like we all need to remember our words has a big impact in our
yeah,
conversations, and our tone has another big impact in our conversation. So when we put that out into perspective, we're realizing like we can also consider that when we're thinking of other people and when we're trying to get to know people, because at the end of the day, we all want to know somebody else in some way, shape, or form, even if it's in the smallest nudge. So I could think like practicing that and putting yourself out there really does help with that. So I'm really glad that you said that and you brought that up and how you would say to your younger self that you would ask more questions because I think I don't want to stop asking questions. I want to just keep the questions going. So yes, ask more questions is a valid point to make. So I guess to start wrapping up the show, what can be some lasting words of wisdom that you can leave us off with?
well, a lot of times people, especially when they encounter people that are a little contrary, whatever the case is, a lot of times they think, well, if they would change, I could love them more. But the principle of opposite says, well, actually, if you would love them more, they might change. See, because for the most part, we're so wrapped up in our own needs and our own pain. And so the idea is, if we were as concerned about the needs and pains of others more than we are about the needs and pain of ourselves, not only can we be more comforting, but that way, both people benefit. You know,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
I think that's it's really the key is let's focus on the needs and the pains and of other people. And that way we get to take who we are and what we have to contribute to them, and we can be an encouragement to them, and we might just learn something, you know.
yes. Yes. And if you could just learn one thing a day, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that a nice thing,
Oh,
a nice feeling? I mean, for me, I always seek out some type of new information every day because every day is something new. You know what I mean? And if I can implement something new at least every day, because sometimes you get stuck in a routine, then it's something to look forward to. You know what I mean? Because you don't know everything. Not everybody knows everything. So it's just, even if you're a savant, you still don't know everything. You still have your
right.
limitations in certain areas. So it's just
Yeah,
like being vulnerable and knowing that you don't know everything I think, is another great step to just getting in that right direction and just shifting your perspective, shifting your words, and just changing your life around just by one simple step. So that's a very valid point. So if anybody out there who would like to know more about Dennis and what he has to offer to the world, and you're just curious, go check him out. I have his website on mine. Oop, you click right under his picture. You can find all the stuff that he has to offer so that you can continue on thinking So with that being said, y'all, bye.